My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Pidansya Sangaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to cover Mahan's I Got philosophy, the concept of darkness, part 3. This concept of darkness is also known as concept of Erul. And within that concept, Swamiji speaks about threefold nothingness. And I want to today speak about Swamiji's philosophy and description of what this threefold nothingness is and how this is very relevant to our biology, our mental state, our spiritual state, and our purpose and meaning in this universe. So let me start. So Swami speaks about threefold nothingness. What he means here is that he says that this threefold nothingness, he says this nothingness is beyond the physical, astral, and mental bodies. So this threefoldness he's speaking about is our own personality, which is the physical personality, the astral personality, and the mental body. He says this three, there is something that is transcendental to this three, or more subtle than this three. He says this is light, you see? And then he goes on to say that what this light is, and later on I'll discuss more detail in what light means. Then he says that this light, there is something more, there is something beyond this light, or transcendental to this light, or subtle to this light. And he says this is sound. Then he speaks about thought. What he means thought here is the cosmic intelligence. And then he says that is beyond, that which is beyond thought is darkness. And this concept of Erul that he speaks about, this higher order continuum. So Swamiji speaks about this threefold nothingness is that this physical, astral, mental bodies, in another form, they are light. In one form, they are actually vibrations. In another form, they are thought. And finally, they are all in that manifestation of that darkness. So when you come to that darkness state, it is what you come to the state of nothingness, no-thingness, that which is absence of matter and energy. So though it manifests as matter and energy, in its original form, it is neither matter nor energy. It is what we call supra matter or supra energy, or something we call spirit or spiritual. So again, Swamiji goes on to explain this, and I'm going to take you through this in a little bit more detail, what he means by this threefold nothingness. So let's start with our physical body. And our physical body has three components, which are very important. The first one is the physical body, which is matter and energy. Sometimes in our language, we call it hardware. So there's a lot of parallels to our biology and computers that we use every day, right? So the first step is essentially our physical body, which is matter and energy. It's gross body. We feel it every day. It has birth, and it has sustained for a while. It transitions, and then eventually it is dissolved. And so this physical body is matter and energy. It continuously changes. There's a process of beginning, sustenance, and dissolution. There is a component that is more subtle than this matter energy body, the gross body. And Swamiji speaks this, says that this is actually our mental body, which is nothing but our neural activities. And we see that the physical body has senses, which brings in information, and that information is converted into neural activities. And the neural activities, converts that into, sound and, taste and vision and all those things. And it gives us experience of this material world. It creates thoughts. Thoughts is a measure of experience. And we see that as time goes on, these mental, the neural activities is critical for us to understand, be aware, and also be conscious of this material world. That gives us, the various thoughts and experiences that eventually leads to our personality, and what we call, all of us have our own personality, and this personality is what Swamiji speaks about is astral, and this is what gives us that vibration. And sometimes when you see certain people, they carry a beautiful, winsome personality, kind of an aura that permeates them. That is, beyond their biology, and it's a personality that all of us carry. Whereas there are others that come with a very personality that is more challenging and difficult. So again, we see that all of us carry that personality, which is much more subtle, and we see that in these three stages, we move from that gross to a more and more subtle state of our own personality. So Swamiji speaks about this in the context of the computer. We have the hardware, the software. Within the software, the mind has softwares that enable us to think, enable us to analyze, enable us to figure things out, enable us to manage challenges, and a whole range of softwares that we inherit from when we were born, and we develop over time various softwares and learnings and so on. And also over time, we also develop a personality, or a kind of a personality that gives us certain qualities and values that is sometimes beyond our own biology, that makes us think more deeper and think, amazing things that sometimes transcends our own, limitations of our own biology. So again, we see that these three stages Swamiji speaks about in the context of cloud technology. In an earlier lecture, long time ago, I used to say this is the motherboard, right? But today we see that we can actually connect to systems through cloud, and so somehow our personalities have transitioned from a motherboard type to a more broader, more global, cloud-like technology that we're able to tap into different knowledge and different experiences, and somewhat like our own personality, that we have sometimes limitedness, and sometimes we have a much more expanded, depending on how we develop our personalities, nurture our personalities. So this is the three important bodies, or substratums that we have, which is our physical, mental, and astral. And something that is more, I want to, it's more subtler than this. It requires me to take you through our biology in a more deeper way. So these are primarily matter, energy, kind of, substratum, but there are something much more subtle than this. And this brings us to the different state of our matter. So the body is made of matter. Body itself has got different, states. The matter is made out of molecules, and within, the molecules, much more subtler than the molecules, is atoms. Subtler than that is we see that we have nucleus, neutrons, protons, electrons that make up that atom. And we see the subtler than that is we have neutrons. And today, over the last 30 years, science has been talking about, subtler than that is strings and vibrations and quarks. And we see that in all this, what we know is that our gross body is a manifestation of more subtler components. We at one time we thought of atoms, and today we are speaking about neutrons and quarks and strings. So it's a different stages, different states of our own material existence. And Swamiji captures this in his quote very nicely. But before that, let's talk about light. And I think a part of this is light. And if you see, all of us are actually solar beings. We are all powered by solar power. What do I mean by that? Electrons and, protons and neutrons and all those things are, a component of that light. And I want to define what light is. What is light? Light is nothing but photons, this electromagnetic waves that comes from, the atoms, and from the electrons, and so on. So we have electromagnetic waves, and photons is a part of that. And we see that, so we see that a part of our biology is sometimes referred to as that, built from light. And it's true because, our physical body depends very much on all the components, the subtle components that I spoke about. So Swamiji here then speaks about light. And if you see, uh, this entire biology is manifested by this changes in from matter to molecules to atoms to neutrons to strings, quarks and strings. And here Swamiji speaks about, this was written in the 40s and the 50s when Swamiji was thinking about this. He says that subtler than all this material identity that we have is light. What he's defining is that all this is emanating through a more subtler substratum called light. And subtler than that, he speaks about sound. It's quite interesting. Here he means, unarvu means vibrations. And what he was alluding to, even before his time, string theory was not there, but he was alluding to this substratum called vibration that is critical, which is much more subtler than all the components that are listed here, particularly our physical biology. Then he goes on to say that subtler than that is thought. And here he means the cosmic intelligence that brought all this together, brought all the electromagnetic force field. And this is part of that primordial atom that he spoke about, which is the cosmic intelligence. Later on, he will define what that is as that the big I. So this thought, this cosmic intelligence, which defined as part and parcel of the creator of our universe, creator of all this, sound, light, matter, energy that assemble things together. So he says that there is a cosmic intelligence that brings all this together. And subtler than the cosmic intelligence is, and before that, this notion of cosmic intelligence is also captured in the Advaita teaching. It talks about, as I mentioned earlier, all this, the physical body, mental body, astral body, light and sound are all part of this material universe, what we call the transitory God, means God in different forms. And part of that is the cosmic intelligence that creates, that created this universe of ours, and the physics within that gave rise to electromagnetism and a whole range of forces that unleash sound and light and matter and energy, and us speaking at the present moment, and so we see that this notion is beautifully captured in the Advaita teaching, where he speaks about this cosmic intelligence, which is ever penetrating everything in this universe. It is core, part and parcel of this, and it speaks about this intelligence and the bliss. It is part of matter and that soul. And here, this Advaita teachings talks about this beautiful dance between the transcendental and the transitory God, and how the transitory God, all the components of us, is a manifestation of this transcendentality. So it's beautifully captured in this Advaita. And what Advaita says is that this cosmic intelligence is a manifestation of that darkness that is spoken about. So we see that our biology, our physical body, mental body, astral, are all a manifestation of light, vibrations, the cosmic intelligence, and the darkness or Erul, or the higher order continuum. So he says that all of this, so we are actually God in different forms, and while we see the material world very real, of course, because we are always partaking, we are always in the material world, so we are so entrenched in this material world. And we experience the material world every day. We feel our physical body, we think a lot, we have our mental state of our existence, and we also do know that we all have a personality that is, uh, different from our physical body and our mental state, though it has an influence. So we know that these components are crucial to our state of existence in this material world. Now, the key thing is that as one explores the material world, we see those changes. We see those, finiteness, and we see that temporariness. But as one goes deeper, slowly, you know, decoupling from the material world for a short moment and starting to reflect back, they're able to see, they'll be able to feel that more subtle experience and subtle substratum, in the form of, light, aura, in the form of vibrations, unarvu, in the form of the experience of that universality, the cosmic intelligence, and finally, that state of nothingness. So this process of slowly decoupling from that material world to experience the subtle and more, subtle body or substratum is the process what we call yoga, to be in union with, to be able to slowly silence that material world. And that silencing the material world gives us a more expanded experience, a more subtle experience, and it gives us a more liberating means not caught up by these forces of our material world and the physics of the material world, the cause and effect. And slowly, and that's what we say sometimes, we decouple from the karmic laws, the cause and effect. We get a blissful state. So in that expanded state, we get a very blissful, liberating state of existence. We get that in our deep sleep, but meditation is a way that we experience it while we are still aware of it. And finally, we attain the finality. The finality is that higher order continuum, or that cosmic intelligence that ultimately leads us to the higher order continuum, that Erul state. So this process is called yoga, or self-realization, SELF, self-realization, which the first S is silence realization, a sense of quietude, absence of this material universe. This is what Swamiji calls nothingness, no thingness, absence of thing. Thing here is matter and energy. So that's quietude in the mind, that silence. The silence gives us a more expanded personality, expanded understanding, expanded awareness. It gives us a liberating experience of not being caught up by this material world and the forces of the material world. And finally, we attain that finality, that higher order continuum that is transcendental to this material world. So this is what Swamiji speaks about. So what we see is that an ordinary human being experiences the material world. Through meditation, they realize that there is something far greater. And as they push on, they see that that entire existence is supported by that higher order continuum, that cosmic intelligence. And finally, even that disappears, that entire identity merges with that higher order continuum. This is what Swamiji is speaking about in this quote. So here he speaks about this threefold nothingness is that which is beyond the physical, transcendental to physical, astral, and mental bodies. This a manifestation of that is light. A much more subtler manifestation is that vibration. Scientists call it strings. Subtler than that is the cosmic intelligence, a much more universal personality, and finally, subtler than that is a higher order continuum. So in all of this, we have that component in us. It is that component, that nothingness, gives us that material existence, that gives us that experience of that material existence in all its infinite potentiality and varieties and awesomeness. So when one understands this, one have greater appreciation of their lives. Life is anchored on something which is far greater than their own biology, which is that infinite higher order continuum that Swamiji is speaking about. Sandosham. Thank you.